Hello, everybody. This is Founder Laerun, and I am here with Fantasy Grounds College. I am going to cover making themed encounters. This is probably one of my favorite things to do with any role-playing games. This could be a little bit more creative as opposed to just using a pre-made module. I'm running a Icewind Dale adventure with a party of 6. And I have to prep for it. So instead of just doing that in private, I'm going to actually do it live in public. And if my players are watching, spoiler alert, if you don't want to know what's coming up next, then don't watch this video. I don't care either way. It's going to be a battle regardless. So I'm going to go ahead and start working on making an encounter based on an Arctic theme. So I've already handpicked some images and maps and some NPCs and that sort of thing. So the scenario right now is basically the group or the party is getting ready to set out for the day. They had just finished visiting a barbarian camp. Things went okay. But then when they refused to drink with the clan members, things got a little dicey. So the barbarians got a little bit offended, and the chieftain told them they have to leave in the morning. So they're getting ready to pack up and set out for the rest of their journey to Icewind Dale. Along the way, there are little things that happened, and one of the things I have planned is an ice worm encounter. So I went through all of my materials that I have in Fantasy Grounds, and I loaded up a bunch of monster manuals, and I came across an ice worm. So the ice worm is pretty deadly. It's got over 100 hit points. However, the party members are first level, so I'd hope that they know to stay back. But there's a group of barbarians that are going to help them too. So I don't plan on them finishing this out, but I do and plan to spring the encounter on them, hoping they don't die. So that's basically what I'm going to be doing today, is designing this encounter. So the artwork I have here is actually commissioned by Luiz Prado. So if you guys don't know who he is, he's pretty prolific author, or an artist. He's based in Brazil. He's done other work for other authors in the DM's Guild. I think he's one of the best character / covers. He builds a lot of covers. You'll see his work all over the DM's Guild. So I commissioned this artwork for my Ice World campaign, but I'm going to incorporate it in my campaign now since it's an ice-based theme, so I don't waste my investment. The other thing is I think this gives a lot of immersion instead of just an encounter. One thing I want to do with the ice worm is edit it a little bit, because it is pretty strong. I mean, it's got over 100 hit points. It's a large creature. It has a natural armor class of 15, but it has like 115 hit points. So I'm probably going to lower that a little bit. I'll go down to about 99. So, I mean, that's not a lot, but, when you come to a big battle like this, it could mean life or death. It has a lot of very devastating. It can tunnel, and because it burrows into the ice, when it emerges from the ice, a frigid air blasts out of in a 15-foot radius. Each creature has to make a save or take a bunch of cold damage and have its speed reduced to 0 until the next turn. That's pretty nasty. Like I said, it can burrow through solid ice at half its burrow speed and leaves a 10-foot diameter hole or tunnel in its wake. It can bite, and it's a pretty nasty bite. It can swallow you, basically. So it's not a fun encounter by any means. Something you can do up here, this is an ice worm. This is the actual name for it. But in the non-ID name, you can just say ice creature. It pretty much is the same thing, so it's almost not worth mentioning. But if they don't know what it is, you can click on the identify item. And basically, when I put this on the combat tracker, they won't know exactly what it is. They'll know it's some sort of creature, but they'll say probably a remoras or, an ice snake or something like that. But it's actually an ice worm. So I'm going to leave this as ice creature. And when I put this on the combat tracker, they won't know the exact name of it until maybe one of the barbarians says something, and then I'll reveal the name during the encounter. The other thing I can do to make this more memorable is right now it has just a looks like a black and white drawing of the token. So I want to see what that looks like. So I'm going to basically add this to a map eventually, and I want to look at this token. But the assets that I have on my system, I'm going to go to tokens. And again, I have another artist that I follow quite a bit, and that's Bernardo Hasselmann. He did the tokens, so I'm going to grab his token that he made for me. So I'm going to go to my data folder. This is where I have most of my main stuff stored. And I have a folder or a subfolder called Bernardo's Tokens. And in here, there's creature, monsters, demons, devils. I have a mixed folder. So I'll go to creature monsters. You can see there's a snow spider, but I don't have the ice worm in here. So let me go back to the tokens directory. And I have a thing called Winter World, which is what this went to. And if I go in here, the ice worm technically should be in here. If you're using Fantasy Grounds for the first time, you can stretch this out and then use the arrow to tab over if you have too many. So it does stretch with you and it will reveal more assets, but I'm sure there's like a 50 limit. So if that's the case, you use the arrow to go to the next. So now I'm going to take and assign a different token. Instead of the generic black and white one, I kind of want to use the token that I purchased for the ice worm. Now this ice worm token is for the base level of the NPC, so I may not want to change it here. So I'll go ahead and lock it. I've already changed the hit points, but I'll lock the token. Now if you don't want to worry about it, then just switch it out. But if you do it at the encounter level, it won't switch out the normal one that comes with it. It'll only switch it for the situation. So when we build the encounter with the ice worm, we don't lose the original from the NPC. We just use a different one for the specific planned encounter. So I'll do that, I think. So I'll leave this token alone because that's the base. You know, that's where all the tokens are going to have that same token. But for my encounter, I'm going to open up the encounters area. And I have a place that I built my own encounters in. It's called My Encounters. And I use this for where I have all my specific one. I had goblin trolls, and I have this barbarian elk clan, which I'll use. And then I'm going to make a couple others so I can kind of spread the wealth out. So the next thing I'm going to do is I made this group by clicking on the Edit Groups button. And then you click the plus sign, and it will say Group 1, and then you just rename it. So I called it My Encounters. And now I'll select My Encounters, which is just my own group. And I'm going to hit the plus button on the bottom right corner, or you can right click and create an item, which is somewhat faster. And then I'm going to call this Ice Worm. Ice Worm Attack, for that matter. Kind of give it a better name. And then once I lock it, it will update the list. So here's the Ice Worm Attack. So if I want to bring that back up, it's right here. And I want to unlock it again, and I'm going to drag over the NPC stat block for the Ice Worm. So here's the original. I'm going to drag this over, and there it is. I could have even left the hit points the way they were if I wanted to, but Fantasy Grounds will actually roll if you want to. You can set a parameter will roll its hit points, so it's different every time. So I set it at 99 just for the sake of it. So here's the original token. Yeah, it's just a black and white sketch type thing, so I definitely want to use my token. It looks a little boring. So what you can do on a copy of your Ice Worm, so if let's say you don't want to modify the original, in the encounters area, you can make a copy of this. So if I go to all and I type Ice Worm, You got to make sure I'm in the right area. So NPCs. So I already had a search for worm. So ice worm is in Almond Ray's Arctic realms. So if I don't want to modify this and I want to make a copy, I just drag and drop it back into this area. So there is a copy of it now. And I will drag and drop this into my NPCs. So I have campaign NPCs. That's what I called my group. And I'll drag that into there so that they're part of my campaign. So here's my campaign NPC so far. So I have a couple things in here that I've already built. And I'm going to delete this one because I'm going to use the modified one. So this is when you can, if it's locked, you can actually modify it. So it's already modified on the hit points. What I'm going to do, though, is, first of all, I'm going to switch this token out instead of adding it to the actual encounter. So you can do it either way, but I want a more permanent token solution. So I'm going to go back to my assets. And as I said, I had a folder with a bunch of frost-themed creatures and such. And here's my ice worm. So I'm going to drag and drop the token up here onto the top right. Now, if your NPC stat block is locked, you need to make a copy of it first. You do that by dragging the token or the entry in the NPC stat block out for a second and then drop it back in. And it will make a copy of it. And then you take the copy and put it in your own group. That way it's separate from all the rest of it. And now I'm just going to go through. And so I customize the token. And on the other tab, there's some artwork here. And that's what the token looks like. So I'm going to substitute this photo out for my own. So instead of this, I'm going to go to my images and maps. And basically, I'm just doing this for flavor, so it's not like I have to do this, but I think it looks good when you have something, more unique and custom. So if I go to my assets and I go back to my data folder, and then I go to images and maps, and I'm going to go to the data folder. And then I have a thing called Arctic Snow, which is where all my pictures and stuff are. And then there's assets. I have cold and snow random maps, and then I have some winter ice handouts. So I'm going to go ahead and double click that, and it will take it a few seconds to churn through all my artwork. The more stuff you have in the large files, the longer that takes. So be careful of how much you put in there. So I have all these pictures here that are just hand-picked, and the one I wanted is this ice encounter. So that's up here in the right corner, but I want to see if there's anything else. Yeah, here's the final edition of it. So I definitely want this, so I double-click. And this makes a preview image of the ice worm, and this is the one that I purchased from Luiz Prado. So I'm going to go ahead and create an image record. So before I do that, I want to make sure that in the images and maps area that I am in the right group. So I want to change it to, let's see, do I have my own group? Yeah, my Arctic Encounters. That's what I called it, my group. And now when I click on create image record, it actually creates the record and it puts it as an asset for the campaign. So now what I can do is I can spruce this up to make this a lot more interesting for my party. So before I link it or put it anywhere, I'm going to do a little bit of magic to it. But I intend on linking it to this. So I can take and grab this token or this link on the top left, drag and drop it, and replace the image with the one that was there before. And hopefully, if I did it right, yeah, now it brings up this image instead of that black and white sketch. And then what I'm going to do to this image is I'll put the NPC aside for right now. I'm not done with it. Is I'm going to just kind of add some stuff to it, make it look a little bit more magical and cool looking. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to stretch this out so I can see it a little bit better. So I'm going to take the bottom right corner and stretch this. I'll close the asset folder for now. And then I'm going to see right now, here's the image. Now I have this drop down toggle bar where you can zoom to fit. And this is the final rendering of the drawing. I have a sketch version and then I have this final colored version. They're actually pretty nice, so it's really cool looking. So this ice worm is going to be part of my encounter, and I want to make it kind of memorable. So instead of just the image, with Unity, I want to take and make this memorable encounter, and you can do that with Unity. Where in Classic, you kind of were limited as to, you bring an image in and it is what it is. But in this case, I can do lots of different things. So first things first is I'm going to lock the image. So I don't want to move around in case I want to edit it or something. I don't want it to move the position. Now, I'm not going to put a grid on it or anything, but if you were, you'd definitely want to make sure that's locked. Now I'm going to go to the effects button down on the very bottom of this frame. I'm going to add an effect. So it's just a layer. It's really doesn't have anything assigned to it yet. And then I'm going to go up to the actual effects, and I'm going to pick from the drop down which one I want. And I'm thinking that I want some snow. So I will put the snow on here. Or maybe I'll do that last. So I'm going to put some steam or some kind of mist or something so that it looks a little bit more hazy. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the drop down and click on mist. And as you can see, there's quite a bit of mist there, but it carries over onto the actual background. So to combat that, we're going to add a layer. So this is a mask. So I have the mist selected, and now we're going to click this plus button, which actually covers the whole thing temporarily. And then you have two choices. You can reveal or cover. So I'm going to reveal, and the only thing I want to reveal is probably around in here off the ice worm. Or I can reveal just down in here. So it depends on what you want to do. But to make this simpler, I'm just going to reveal the whole map. But you can do sections if you want. So I'm going to take this and quarantine this area, or make this my, okay, so now the actual mist is in here. Now that's a little overkill, so I'm going to go ahead and dial back the amount of mist a little bit so it's not so invasive. And then the speed of it, you go left or right to determine the direction. Well, if you look at the way this is drawn, it looks like there's snow coming off the back of the creature, so the wind direction is more than likely like this. And the closer to center you get on the speed, the slower it is. So you have basically speed adjustment to the left and speed adjustment to the right. So 0 is actually calm or nothing. And then I'm going to change this to 54. That slowed it way down. And then if you wanted to, you could hide certain areas, or only make it, but this is going to be across the whole thing, so I'll leave it like that. Now I'm going to add the snow layer. So I'm going to go ahead and adjust this down just a little bit more. I don't want it to disappear, but I don't want this to be a big deal. And then on the snow layer, I'm going to go ahead and select snow. Okay, here we go. So now, sorry about that if I was blanked out for a while. I actually had my mute on, but yes, you can totally put a spell token underneath that play layer so that it can be accessed by the GM. And you can also turn it on or off, so you can leave it there, and then when you need it, you can turn it on for visibility's sake, those sort of things. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up a map. So I will take the NPCs and all that stuff and link them on here. So my notes are ready to go, and I have the encounter for the chieftain. I have the encounter with his minions, and then I have the ice worm itself. So there's actually 3 different encounters, but I do it in waves so that the combat tracker is not overloaded. So I'm going to go ahead and close these temporarily. Bring this over to the side, and now I'm going to take and put a bunch of maps out that I want to look at. So I picked a collection of maps. These are called the cut mirror shards, and what this is a preview image of all the different map types. So we have an ice worm, so I don't want to put him in anything structured. It's going to have to be ice or snow. So one of these, probably this map right here, would be the best since it's kind of bare and it has, you know, the minimum stuff required to run it. This also already has a mask on it, so I'll show you how to do that. But this is the map I'm going to choose. So it's called the Ice Wastes. And then for the actual title, I called it Cold Wilderness. So you can unlock and change that. Now, the grid was not on there originally. So if you go to the grid, and you can turn it on, and then this is set at 60 by 60, which seems to be the perfect scale for this. And then if you want to, you can increase or decrease the intensity of the actual lines. So I'll turn that up just a hair, and maybe I'll make them a little bit darker so they contrast, and then I'll turn the opacity up a little bit. So that's basically how you set the grid. It's better to get maps that don't already have a grid on it. So it's important that you have the grid set basically before, and then it will be a lot easier when you're setting up your encounter. So this map has a little bit of strategic value. You have these rocks, so it'd be much harder for the ice worm to burrow between or inside the rock. So if the players are smart, they might get up on here like an island and not be able to be tunneled under. The other thing is in the center is where I'm going to locate the encounter for the ice worm. So I'm going to go ahead and drag and drop this map into my notes. That way I don't lose it. And I'm going to link my notes to the map. So they're both connected to each other. That way I don't lose it. The selection map, I'll leave that in case I want something to add on to this. But for right now, this is what I'm going to use. Okay, so the ice worm attack is going to be in the center. So I'm going to just link this attack to this area. And that's just a pin. So when the players get to this point, I can bring that up and it'll allow me to click on it. So I got to lock the map first and then access the pin. If you try to access the pins when you're in edit mode or when you have it unlocked, it doesn't always work very well. So lock the map and then click on it, and it should bring it up. Because if you're in the middle of editing or something, it still thinks that you're on a different layer, so it won't let you access the link until you lock it and kind of get out of the different mode that you were in. I found that out the hard way. Okay, so the actual placement of this ice worm is going to be smack dab in the center. So I'm going to take the actual token here on the bottom and drag and drop it onto the map. So it's placed, and it's supposed to be a large creature. So large creatures take up 4 squares. So when you're placing this, you want to have it at the vertices of the 4 squares, not in a square, but at the vertice. And then if you want to make the token a little bit bigger, you can hold down the control key, click on the token, and roll your mouse wheel backwards or forward. So I'm going to make the ice worm a little bit more menacing. That's pretty good without being too crazy. So that's where he's going to be when the players come to this area. So I'm going to go ahead and lock my notes, and the placement is ready to go. Now I'm going to, and when I close it, actually closes the token out temporarily. Now I'm going to put the party members on the map in a starting location. So probably down here in the south or over here in the west. So I'm going to take and drag this friendly icon in the combat tracker on the bottom here. So it's down here on the bottom. Drag and drop. Here is all their tokens. So Uther is usually up front along with Arlic. And then Gazelle is our rogue, so he's probably down here somewhere. And then Amanda Frostbeard is our healer, so she might be back a little bit. We have our mage, Blade Singer, and then we have a ranger. So these guys are probably, moving up the trail or heading up to the location just to cut through here. The Barbarians probably won't come out until the next round, until they see what's going on. Or maybe I already have the Barbarians kind of set. So I'll click on my themed encounters, and I'm going to bring up just the regular Barbarians. And I'm going to place them strategically on the map. So they'll come from different directions. So there'll be one here. There'll be one here. There'll be like 2 or 3 up here. And there'll probably be one with the party members to make sure that they're leaving. And then there'll be a couple over here. And that will set the stage in case they're needed. So I might not even summon them. It just depends on what happens. So the Barbarians are back here. I'm going to place them back away, so I don't want them to die that soon. And then they're placed. So once I've placed them, I can stick the encounter on the map if I need to. And this is the pin or shortcut for just these guys. And then if the Barbarians call their leader, or if the leader comes, I'm going to place them ahead of time. So they'll come probably from the east or the north. So I'll go ahead and place one bodyguard here. So they'll come from the west. One bodyguard here. And then the chieftain, I'll put him right there. So they're ready to go. So when they're ready to come out to fight, they're all set. And once I close this, they'll disappear. So to make this even more memorable, I'm going to add a little bit of line of sight and that sort of thing. So I already have everything kind of figured out where I want them to go. And then I want to size the window too to what size I want this to be when I get ready to run the encounter. So I'm sizing the window to about here. And then I'm going to go ahead and expand it out. So you can right click and go to view, and you can do zoom to fill or zoom to fit. I'll just do zoom to fit. And then I click anywhere on the map and zoom in once by rolling my mouse wheel forward. And then maybe one other time. But that's all I really would need. So there's not a whole lot of line of sight here, but there's these rocks that I want to trace around so that they can't see over the rocks, but if they climb up on the rocks, they can see. So I'm going to unlock the map, and I'm going to go to line of sight mode, which is this brick wall. And then there's a terrain feature, which is this tree. And then I'm going to go to line mode, because I'm just going to do a rough line around here. And then that, I'll call it good. So I'm going to go ahead and draw just a line around this area here. And you don't have to be super precise on these. I was guilty of putting too many points on the map, so be careful with that. You don't need a bunch of points all over the place. Matter of fact, the more points you have, the more memory it takes. I was told that it recalculates these lines every second. So if you add a whole bunch of lines to a map and there's a bunch of unnecessary links or these points that I'm making now, it will cause the memory load to increase, especially for your players and such, and it has to go across the internet. So this could be a problem that some of you are having and you didn't know it. Okay, so there's one, and you would systematically go through these and just place your line of sight. In this case, it's terrain. You don't have to do this if you don't want to. This is just a quick little thing to show you that it can be done. So this is kind of like a big, huge rocks that are kind of sticking out from underneath the snow, and they're tall enough, at least 10 feet off the ground. So that's why I'm just deciding to make it like this. But I'm going to go ahead and do that on all these. And this is just something that you can do to spruce up your encounter. I want this encounter to be kind of memorable, so that's why I'm doing this. And that's the whole point of this lesson, is to kind of show you what can be done. Now, this is a little bit time consuming, but I have about a week, or a little less than a week, so I might as well do it now. So I'm doing my prep work now for you guys, so you guys can see what I'm doing. And as I said before, if you guys are playing in my game, shame on you. Now here's the other stuff. So I'm going to treat these as 3 different rocks. So this one is just probably only about 5 feet up above the surface, but I'm going to go ahead and it's probably about 6 or 7 feet. But anything over 6 foot is going to have some kind of terrain on it, because you can't really see very well over these rocks unless you jump or something. And then there again, I'm going to do this one. This one's probably, one side of it's probably only like 4 or 5 feet, but as you go to the southeast or southwest, the rock terrain gets a little bit higher. So for elevation's sake, you can use the color as kind of a way to determine how high it is. So I would say these lighter portions are lower, and the higher ones might be lower or higher, or these are shadows, so maybe they're lower. So it just depends on how you want to interpret it. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this up. And this is pretty much all I'm going to really need is in regards to line of sight, is just kind of a basic outline of where the rock formations are. And what will happen is when I go to line of sight mode, it'll block the vision from the players and for the NPCs. Okay. Now, if you want to do any fine tuning, you can actually go to the pointing or the selection tool and zoom in. And if you want to, you can just select the points that you want to mess with and kind of tidy it up a little bit. But it's not really that necessary, because normally you're not zoomed that far in anyways. So it's just a matter of time and pace and what your preferences are. But if you go through these and clean them up, they look pretty good. So like this will probably be out here more. I'll probably put this out here. So it's just a matter of how much time do you have and how much effort you want to put into it. So the last thing I'm going to do is put a little snow in here. I think that would look really good. Maybe some clouds. So again, I'm going to click on the effects layer, and then I'll click on it here in the assets window. And then on the effects panel part, I'm going to pick, I think I'm going to go with some cloud. The clouds would come later, so I'll do snow first. And then again, I'm going to quarantine this area. So I'll click on the layer so it covers everything. And then I'm going to click on reveal area. And the only area I want to reveal is this map, not outside of it. Okay, so that keeps that down. I'm going to turn up the snow intensity, but I'm going to turn the amount down a little bit. And then the size too. I'm going to make the snowflakes a little bit smaller and turn the speed down a little bit. Turn the intensity up so you can see it, but make the amount less. And then I'll go ahead and add some clouds now. So this is the snow layer, and now I'm going to add a cloud layer on top. So again, I click on effects and drop down, and I'm going to pick the cloud option. And as you can see, it's kind of made the sky a little bit grayer, which kind of makes sense. I will lower the opacity a little bit, and the shadows will come down just a little bit so it's not too dark. And then the clouds themselves, I'm going to go ahead and lighten those up a little bit so they're not so bright and prominent. And I'll turn the speed down a little bit more. And then the offset is just changing the location of where the clouds are coming from and the part of the graphics that it's going to show, so that you can see the shadows passing over. So that's the cloud effect. Now, if you want to organize these, you can make a folder and drag these effects into that folder. So now they are in their own group. And I still have snow above clouds. That doesn't make sense. So I need to drag the clouds above the snow. That way it looks correct on the map. There we go. So anyways, this is just a way to lighten the shadows a little bit. So this is just a way to kind of spruce up the environment so it looks better and it looks more immersive. If you do too much overkill, though, it'll turn off your players and you'll end up doing a bunch of work for nothing. So this is just a way to enhance your encounter and make it look a little nicer. Like I said, if you do too many effects, it's going to really bog your game down, especially for people with older computers. So just keep that in mind. You don't want to overkill all the effects. I've seen people put water and then ice and snow, and by the time you get all that in there and stuff, you're going to use this encounter for an hour or two, and then you're probably never going to use it again. So just keep that in mind. What's it worth the time to you? So now what I'm going to do is go ahead and call that good and re-stretch this out a little bit where I want it. And then I'm going to right click on the map, go to view and zoom to fill, maybe? Yeah, zoom to fill, make sure that it's all covered to the extremities. So that looks pretty darn good. And when I get ready to spring this encounter, I'll have the party roll like I don't know, maybe some sort of check. So for instance, Filson, he is our ranger, so I might have him roll a survival check and have him move up to the front. And let's go to his skills and his survival. So he's going to look around on the snow and the terrain. And the number to beat from the ice worm is determined by the ice worm itself. So I need to at least get that on the combat tracker. So I'll click on the encounter. I'll click the down arrow, which is on the bottom of the encounter. And it'll place the snow worm on the map and on the combat tracker. Now, this is only visible to me and myself. Players can't see this yet. And now I'm going to bring up his stat block and see what this says. So it says that he's immune to cold damage. He's got a really high con. He has blind sight, tremor sense, and passive perception of 11. So he isn't really necessarily hiding, but he has a fairly good chance of ambushing these guys. So his ice burst is basically what I'm looking at. There's nothing saying that he's being stealthy or anything, but he can sense the players walking on the snow. He can feel the vibrations. So that's how he knows what's going on. So I'm going to go ahead and roll just a raw dexterity check and see what happens. He rolled a 1. So in this case, I'd probably say he's moving around, making like a little tremor. And Filson here, he's like, something's not right here. You guys feel that? And I'm going to go ahead and roll a perception check. He rolls a 22 total with his bonuses. So he's like, there's something out here. There's something under the snow. I mean, he can feel it, and then the rest of the party makes that realization. He rolls a survival check if I allow it, and this will help him determine what it is. He's not quite sure, but he's bracing himself for action. So the ice worm doesn't get any surprise attack or anything. It's just erupting out of the snow. So it basically bursts out of the snow at the last minute. And I make it visible at this point. So on the combat tracker, down on the bottom here where the ice worm is, he has it's not visible yet. So it says ice creature. So I'm going to go ahead and reveal the ice creature, or in this case, the ice worm. I made his token a little bit bigger, so he's a little bit more menacing looking. And then you can see he takes 4 squares. And at this point, the reason I broke up the encounter with the Barbarians is because I didn't want all of them to be on here at once. So here's the other clan members. So when I need to, I'll bring them up. So they'll come after the first round to help the party members. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the menu, and I'm going to roll initiative. And you can roll for everybody. You can roll for just the NPCs, or you can roll for the party members, or however you want to do it. Or you can reset the encounters, clear all initiatives. I'm going to go ahead and roll for everybody. And apparently it's Amanda Frostbeard. So she starts the round off. So she sees this big ice worm. She moves over to the right. So as the game master, I have to hold down the right control key and move the token over. And then she moves up 1 square. And I'll go ahead and approve that so she has a better view of it. And at her behest, she asks that she might cast a spell, or she might use one of her other actions. So she is looking at this thing, and it does not look very nice. She has a thing called Warding Flare. So at first level, she can impose a divine line between yourself and an attacking enemy. When you are attacked by the creature you see within 30 feet, you can use your reaction wound to impose disadvantage on the attack roll, causing light to flare before the attacker before it hits or misses. An attack that can't be blinded is immune to... Oh, see, she doesn't know that, but this thing has blind sense. So it's really not going to help. But she might use it anyways. I wouldn't tell her that ahead of time. I'd let her try it, and then she'll find out the hard way. And then maybe Fairy Fire. That's a really good spell to help everyone. So she's going to cast Fairy Fire, and it's part of her domain spells. It is a first level spell, so she will use one of her first level slots. And it says that Fairy Fire has a 60-foot range. So if she wanted to know the range, she can hold down the right control key and click on the target, and it's 30 feet away, and it shows in the combat tracker that the ice creature is targeted. So now all she has to do is roll for the saving throw, and if it succeeds, then nothing happens. She just lost her spell. However, if she does succeed, there's some other rolls to be made. So I'm going to go ahead and roll the save. And the creature failed. So now I'm going to apply just the concentration effect on Amanda. And as you can see, this thing lasts 10 rounds, and she has the concentration effect on her. The next effect will go on the creature. So now when creatures are basically being attacked, they will have advantage against them. So whoever attacks the creature should have advantage. And then there's a third one. I don't know what this last one's for. Oh, this is an effect that goes on the creature. I think I already did that. Yeah. So that just says that they cannot be invisible. So that's what this says. So that's its turn. Well, that's Amanda's turn. So then I'd go down the list here. So Gilfindor is a blade singer. So I would go to his actions tab and take a look at what he can do. He could take out his longbow. I don't know if he wouldn't necessarily do that, but he has a firebolt, so let's try that. So firebolt is a cantrip, so you won't waste the spell slots. So he's going to go ahead and target the ice worm. So holding down the right control key and clicking on the target. So I click on Gilfindor because I have possession of him. And then I click on the holding down the right control key, and that puts the ice creature in his, in his thing. He doesn't have anyone in the way, so I'm going to have him go ahead and cast that. So there is a ranged attack on it, and as you can see, he's got a bonus. So he hit the creature, and now I'm going to cast the actual damage. So it's 1d10 fire. So drag and drop that. Ouch. So the creature's wounded. It's in here in the combat tracker. And the creature is basically, hurt. It really hurt it. So it's more of a cold-based thing. So it should have maybe a slight vulnerability to fire, but it doesn't. So anyhow, that's his turn, I think he's going to move back a little. So I'm going to hold down the Alt key as the Game Master and move him back 10 feet. And then I grant that so that he's kind of out of the combat more. So he sees that and he's like, no way am I going to be up in the middle of that. The audio not coming through, or is it on my end? There was a point where it was muted, so maybe that's what you saw. But sorry about that, everyone. So now what we're going to do is basically have the encounter unwind a little. So the Gilfindor went, he moved, he's telling everyone, hey, get out of the way, or be careful. And then I'm going to pass the turn, and now it goes to Filson. So Filson is our ranger, so he's going to roll a survival check to see if he knows anything about this creature. So I'd say he has an average chance at least. I don't think he's native to the area, so go ahead and roll for him. And he just knows it as a snow beast or a creature, so he's not really familiar with this type of creature at this point. So he's, he doesn't have any exclusive information on this thing, but in his abilities or his actions tab, he does have Fey ancestry, Mark of the Wild, so when he's lightly obscured, he can hide if he wants. He can set up a hunting trap, and his favorite enemy is undead, so that doesn't count now. So he's going to do a longbow action and then back up. So he's going to go ahead and move back 3 squares, or 2 at least. He's going to target the creature, so I'm going to hold down the right control key and click on the creature. The creature's only 25 feet away, so he's well within the range of his bow. And now I'm going to double click on the attack roll. And the mist or whatever, the fairy fire is helping a lot. It's kind of helping him target the creature. So he rolled a total of 24, which is really good. And now I'm going to double click on the damage. Okay, so he did another 10 points of damage, so that's pretty good. I like that. So he basically nailed that thing and went right through it. So they're doing okay for a low-level party. I mean, they're doing okay. So this is what I mean. I wouldn't necessarily put out the Barbarians just yet, because you don't want to clutter the combat tracker. That's the point I'm trying to make. So now I'm going to go down to Uthor. So Uthor is more of a melee type individual, a fighter of sorts. But he's not a fool. But the only thing he really has is a spear, a short blade, and he has a couple things like fighting style dueling. But he's going to just use his crossbow, so he's going to move to the side 10 feet, and then he's going to pull out his crossbow and again target the creature. Double click on the attack roll on the character sheet. He got advantage. He rolled a 20, so that's a critical hit. Now I'm going to double click on the damage, and Fantasy Grounds knows to add the extra points. So there's the extra dice, and he did 7 points of damage to that creature. So that's a pretty good luck these guys have had so far. Now it's time for Gazelle. So Gazelle is going to shoot for shape, so he's kind of going to hide and move, so he can move 15 feet. So he's just going to move to the side and duck behind this rock. So I'm going to go ahead and duck and roll his stealth check, of course. So I'll hold down the Alt key and move him behind the rock. And he's kind of peeking out, looking at the ice creature. He's got a couple people in the way, but he's not too worried about it. I'm going to roll a stealth check on his sheet. So his skills are he has a really good stealth, so it shouldn't be a problem. The creature's passive perception is 11, so if he can beat an 11, he's good. So I'm going to go ahead and roll stealth. He rolled a 20. Go figure. So he is basically not noticed at all, and I'm going to apply the hide action on him. And that will give him disadvantage on his attack. So he moved, he hid, pulled out his bow, and now he's targeting. So that's basically his turn. I'm not going to give him a chance to attack yet, but since he rolled a 20, I'm going to go ahead and give him that chance. Normally, I'd say you can't attack to your next round because you're kind of getting set into place. I'm ruling that because of the situation. That could be different for any number of GMs. So he has his hand crossbow. So I'm going to make him target the creature by holding down the right control key, clicking on the creature, and that is basically 45 feet. The only problem is that Arlick is right dead nuts in his path, and Arlick hasn't moved yet. So what he's going to do is hold his action. So he's going to ready the action, and he says as soon as Arlick moves, I'm going to attack the creature. I'll allow that. So we're going to go ahead and see what Arlick does. So Arlick's going to have that knowledge ahead of time, which is kind of metagaming. But Arlick is not an idiot. He's a paladin, so he's just going to move aside because he knows that he's in the way. And then one thing I forgot to do is turn on the line of sight. So if I unlock the map and I go to play mode and I enable line of sight, this is what it looks like. So technically, he can't see the creature, so he'd have to move out a little bit. So this is why line of sight is good. So he will wait until he can get into sight of it. So instead of waiting and creating problems, I'm going to back that up, and he's just going to peek out here. And he's hidden, so he rolled a 20 on stealth, so he's out of view. And that gets him out of the direct contact with Arlick. He can shoot past him now. So I'll go ahead and roll the attack roll. So on his sheet, he has his hand crossbow ready, so I'll double click on that. He rolled a 13 and he missed, so it went click and it just flew next to the creature, so that sucked. So that's his turn. So Arlick is going to move aside. He heard that thing wing by him, so he is going to move over to this area. So to emulate the movement, I need to hold down the Alt key. So he's posted up there, and if you want to double click on his token, that'll bring up his character sheet. And I'm going to his actions tab. Now he's a heavy weapons master, so he already has that on him, so I don't have to worry. He has Divine Sense and Lay on Hands, which he's not going to need yet. He has a longsword and a mace. So what I think he's going to do is the dodge action. So he's getting ready to move out of the way if he has to. So he's more in a defensive posture, which is a good idea. And that way, if he's attacked or lunged at, he can move quicker, or he can avoid being hit. So now I'm going to hit the down arrow, and he said his action was to dodge out of the way. Okay, so the ice creature goes. The ice creature can move 50 feet, so he is going to move over to the paladin. This is Arlick. So I'm going to hold down the Alt key. So he is right. He's right there next to Arlick. So Arlick has got his hands cut out for him. So the ice burst didn't affect anyone because no one was close enough, but the creature is going to bite him. So it has a 10-foot range, so it could have actually bit him back here, but it actually moved close to him. And he's going to go ahead and I'm going to drag and drop this on Arlick. And it's at disadvantage because Arlick dodge. However, the snake creature or the ice worm was so powerful and quick that it actually still got a hold of him. And now I'm going to roll the damage, which is, wow, 3d8 plus 5. So, ouch. So Arlick partially resisted the damage. However, he's dying because of the ferocious bite. So at this point, this is when the barbarians would come. And he is now, the effect is blinded and restrained. So I have to put that on him. So he is both blinded and restrained right now. And I need to collect this 4d6 acid damage or whatever to effective ongoing damage, as he has them in his mouth. So if you read this, it says that if the creature is medium or smaller, it has to make a DC 16 Dex save or be swallowed by the worm. A swallowed creature is blinded. Okay, so he's not swallowed yet. So let's see if he makes his Dex save first, and then I'll leave the effect on there. So his dexterity save is here on this page. So I'm just going to double click, and we'll see what happens. Nope, he failed automatically. So yes, these are applicable, restrained and blinded. He was swallowed, and he gets an effect of ongoing damage applied to him. So he may die this round. So that's basically the worm's turn. The worm still has movement, so it's going to move over here and confront these other players. So as you can see, this can be very nasty. Now I'm going to hit the down arrow. So next actor, but before I do that, I'm going to add the extra barbarians. So I'm going to hit the down arrow. And now they're all scattered about. I'm going to go ahead and make them visible. So everything's visible now, except for the ones that are hiding or out of the line of sight. And then I'm going to hit the advance arrow, and now it's Amanda's turn. So that's basically how this encounter would go. And then once some of these barbarians start coming in and dying off, then I'll bring in the chieftain. It's better to break this up into pieces, because now, look, you're going to have to scroll up and down. So to battle that, I'm going to go ahead and stretch this down a little bit more and just leave this amount of stuff in here. And then that's how I would basically mitigate, scrolling up and down so much. And as creatures die, you can remove them off here, and it will make it smoother for you. So that's just a memorable encounter. And of course, we do some role playing. I'd make some weird sound effects. So that's basically how that would play out. So when you're making an encounter, grab some good assets, some artwork, get some stuff linked together, swap out some of the tokens. Make this a memorable thing, because when you use a regular generic encounter, you got pogs, and all you're doing is clicking buttons and looking at numbers. It's not as fun as when you get to see the actual creature and a little bit of the strategy, and then you got the immersive background. And if you use music, in Discord, you can put a little bit of that in the very background. It really helps the players and get to the mood. So that's basically what I have for you. I'm not going to go through that entire combat. This is mostly just to try to make a memorable and exciting encounter. So if you guys want to make this something that you practice in your thing, then that's on you to make this more memorable. So I'll bring up my notes again, which I called Themed Encounters Ice. And since I screwed up the combat tracker, I'm going to go ahead and do a long rest. So I'm going to go to rest and go to long rest so everyone can heal and are not damaged. I'm going to go to the menu and delete from tracker only foes or all non-friendly. So I'm just going to delete all the extras on there. And now my players are back to normal. And then I also have to fix a couple ammunition. But nonetheless, that's basically how that encounter would go. So I'll bring up the image again for the creature. So the image of the ice creature is something that I would show right when the barbarians show up. I'd probably right click and just surprise the party and share this record with them as the fight goes on. And I'll say the elk tribe barbarian has come in to reinforce you, and then they all show up, and this would be the picture I'd hand out. So this would be, or I'd wait for the chieftain to come out, and then maybe I'd share it then. But nonetheless, this would really make for a really exciting encounter and not so boring. And again, if you're one of my players, shame on you for watching. That's okay. So anybody that has any questions, just leave them in the text channels. This is something that I think is missed on quite a bit, is to liven up your encounters. So anyways, I'll call it a day. Happy gaming. And if you want to support us, we have a Patreon. It's at patreon.com/FGC. Join our community if you want to learn how to use Fantasy Grounds, or you just need to bounce some ideas, or if you want to volunteer and help us. We're always looking for help. So that's at our Discord. All that stuff is linked in our social medias, or if you do a Google search, you'll find us. So take care, have a good afternoon, and see you around.